Musical Copyright Society of Nigeria visits Edo Police Commissioner.
And in sports, Choma Adowa regularly top list of 60 sports icons in celebration of Nigeria's 60th independence anniversary.
Details of these and more after this break. I am Charles Oppenheimer. Continued on Friday as protesters blocked the ever-busy ring road in continuation of their agitations to see the end of the Special Anti-Robbery Squad (SARS). The protesters were, however, attacked by unknown thugs whose motives are yet to be identified. Over 19 persons sustained injuries, with 2 persons in critical condition and admitted in the Benin Central Hospital, while one male, identified as Simon John, was confirmed dead. The protesters marched from Ring Road to the government house with the body of the deceased. The Deputy Governor, Comrade Philip Shaibu, further marched the protesters back to Ring Road and addressed them in front of the State House of Assembly, assuring them that the attack will be investigated and the suspect will be brought to justice. The Deputy Governor, who met with the Chief Medical Director to ascertain the state of the victims, later assured that the state government will offset the medical bills of those injured in the attack. Meanwhile, Edo State Governor Godwin Obaseki has condemned the attack on NSAS protesters by hoodlums in Benin City. Governor Obaseki, in a statement, charged the Edo State Police Command to provide adequate security for the protesters as they exercise their rights as concerned Nigerians. He also noted that a thorough investigation would commence immediately to bring the culprits to justice. Similarly, the Edo State Police Command said it received with shock the report of the gruesome murder of Simon John by some suspected hoodlums who attacked the NSAS protest. The NSAS protesters at the King's Square, Benin City, on Friday, 16th October 2020. The Commissioner of Police, Edo State, CP Johnson Babatunde Kokumo, has therefore directed the Homicide Section of the State Criminal Investigation Department to commence a full-scale investigation into the immediate and remote cause of the murder of late Simon John, as it vows to arrest the perpetrators of these dastardly acts for prosecution in court accordingly. The CP also commiserated with the family members of late Simon John for his untimely death and prayed to God to give them the fortitude to bear the irreparable loss. He, however, appealed to the NSAS protesters to end the protest and patiently wait for the Inspector General of Police, IGP Mohammed Abubakar Adamu, to implement the police reform. And now to Lagos State, where the police command says 2 deaths occurred in a road accident that transpired during an NSAS protest in the state. The command's public relations officer, Olumiyiwa Adejobi, made this known in a statement on Friday. He said one of the NSAS protesters, identified as Nike, has been arrested for driving recklessly and alleged killing of 2 Nigerians at Ikola Road, Alagbado. The Lagos State Police public relations officer noted that the bodies of the victims have been deposited at the morgue. NSAS protesters in Abuja on Friday continued their protest across the city, demanding justice for all victims of police brutality and killings. While they continue to press for their demands to be met, the protest took another twist as the Muslim youths observed their Jumat prayers on the road. This comes 24 hours after the Federal Capital Territory Security Committee directed that all street demonstrations, protests, and processions will not be allowed anywhere within its environs henceforth. Coming up in moments on our extra voices, like Oliver Twist, Nigerian youths might be asking for more than just the reform of the police system. With continued protests across the country, days after SARS was disbanded, the conversation and demands have gradually snowballed into calls for wider societal reforms. Well, here's just a teaser. Hold on for a moment, Extra Voices has more on this in a moment.
In the ever-evolving world of news, one story becomes extinct the moment another major story breaks. But in KUFM's Extra Voices, the story never dies. It just takes on a new life. We bring you new angles and fresh perspectives to every story, no matter how old or remote.
There are a lot of educated people that are involved in politics nowadays.
We go a little
demanding for a more civilized policing system, beginning with an end to the Special Anti-Robbery Squad (SARS) unit within the Nigeria Police Force. These followed a series of complaints of abuse, extortion, brutality, extrajudicial killings, and all forms of dehumanizing treatment over the years, which the authorities have failed to address. Though the protest has yielded its first major result, which is the disbandment of the unit by the Inspector General of Police, today's Extra Voices report that the youth still wants more from the authorities than merely scrapping the SARS.
Voices of disenchantment about police brutality in Nigeria that have continued to resonate on streets of many cities in Nigeria and beyond. In Lagos, Ibadan, Abuja, Jos, Enugu, Port Harcourt, Benin City, London, and other parts of the world, the voices chanted the same chorus. They want an end to the activities of SARS, a special unit of the Nigeria Police Force created in 1992 by the administration of General Ibrahim Babangida to deal with the problems of armed robbery and other violent crimes.
We can't take it anymore, so it's a good thing that we're coming out to cry out with one voice, and we hope to achieve one goal, which is that the SARS will be reformed, because we're tired of them killing us.
There are perhaps a few Nigerians who haven't encountered the SARS brutality or extortion. Many have stories of personal experience to share.
I took my uncle's car to go and watch. So SARS, they stopped me, brought me down, left my license, I showed them who owns the car. I said my uncle. They asked me my phone and I gave them. They saw a picture of a meme of a white man. They said, what am I doing with the picture of this white man? That I must be doing for one night. I should get down.
Those who don't have certainly have someone very close to them to share.
I never lost a finger. I get back here. Money for somebody. Waste my son. There was no war. There was no fight. There was no riot. Because that the boy was involved in the practice. Not that he was stealing. Not that he was robbing. Just one baby. They wasted the boy for me. Oh God. I had a friend. Kule was asked that I to bring his phone. So I'm not going to give him my phone. That was it. He arrested me. Kule paid himself with 200,000. That money did go to the government.
Several attempts have been made in the past to reform the SARS and the Nigeria Police in general to specifically deal with the complaints of human rights abuses. The most recent was in 2019. However, each attempt has left the force with little or no impact. But the last straw that broke the camel's back was a viral video last week showing the alleged killing of a man in Delta State by the SARS operatives after a series of physical assaults. The video sparked off protests globally, which gradually gathered momentum as celebrities and many prominent fellows joined in. On Sunday, October 11, the Inspector General of Police, Mohammed Adamu, bowed to pressure.
The Special Anti-Robbery Squad of the Nigerian Police, otherwise known as SARS, is hereby dissolved across all formations, the 36 state police commands, and the Federal Capital Territory, where they currently exist.
But more than 5 days after this pronouncement, the protests have continued in many cities across the country and beyond. They say the IGP's pronouncement was not backed by the law, throwing up fresh posers and new demands that may prolong the protest.
The president should give an executive order. We have a constitution. The IGP cannot dissolve SARS. And they disband SARS on audio. We are done with people talking things they don't do in this country. Future generations are in peril. And we have people in government we are supposed to trust with our lives. They don't do nothing. Something has to be done, and it has to be done now.
We do not want them to go to another unit and rebrand them. We want them to be disbanded.
And we will continue to block the airport until they feel the pain that we feel.
The first thing for me is to right now match the federal government's pronouncement with action. All detention facilities of SARS right now should be emptied, should be inspected, should be made with me, because there are people that are rotting away there. There are corpses lying there.
Human rights lawyer Femi Falana and chairman of the editorial board of Daily Post newspaper Kabiru Yusuf believe that a total reform of the force, including welfare and leadership, is the only way out.
The government will have to announce measures towards improving the conditions of service of policemen and women in the country. You cannot pay somebody 45,000 naira and give him a gun and expect him not to turn the gun against the people. From the time you are recruited, you become a commissioned officer, to the time you become a PPO, every step of the the way it's linked with corruption. As the police has made this more returns are made from checkpoints to the divisional police officers down to the commissioners of police. And I'm not making this as a mere allegation. I was a witness, but then nobody will admit that. If I were to win the president, the first thing I would do is get someone outside the police system to head the police, just like he has done with the custom. Get a lawyer, a human rights lawyer.
All this while, the social media has continued to provide the right energy, fueling the street walks as the subject maintained a top trend on all platforms with hashtag #EndSARS, attracting global attention and mobilizing resources to sustain the cause. In a seeming show of solidarity, the co-founder and CEO of Twitter, a social media application, Jack Dorsey, added his voice to the #EndSARS protest in Nigeria. He launched a special emoji of a raised tight fist with Nigerian official color, green, white and green, while calling on his friends to donate via Bitcoin to help the #EndSARS protest. From #EndSARS, the hashtag moved to SARS must end now, hashtag SARS must go now, hashtag #EndSWAT, hashtag end bad governance in Nigeria, and many other similar hashtags, extending the conversation beyond the subject.
Don't let anyone tell you you don't have a voice. You all have a voice. And something gets to speak up. Because Nigeria will deserve good prospects.
Apparently, the demand is going to include extensive reforms, social justice, end of corruption, and enthronement of good governance for a better society. For KUFM's Extra Voices, Chinedu Ekeja.
Coming up in a moment after this break, House of Representatives summoned IGP over police brutality, extrajudicial killing. Please stay with us.
At split seconds, there is a lot happening around us, but we can't be everywhere all the time. We've got work, families, and church to cater to, and most importantly, time to rest. And that's why having a reliable partner like KUFM News is important. Sleeping, no bones. We work round the clock, bringing you stories as they break from Nigeria and across the world. We will stop at nothing to keep you informed, because KUFM News is all about you and stories that affect you. Politics, business, human interests, sports, entertainment, just a word. We've got you covered. KUFM News. Timely, precise, spot on.
Welcome back. It's Lunch News, Dawn on 92.7 KUFM Benin City. And on the news, the House of Representatives has issued a 7-day ultimatum to the Inspector General of Police, Adamu Mohammed, to appear before its Joint Committee on Justice, Human Rights and Police Affairs. IGP Mohammed is to appear before the committee over allegations bordering on police brutality and extrajudicial killings. Addressing a news conference in Abuja, the chairman of the Joint Committee on Justice, Human Rights and Police Affairs, Honorable Ugunda Uzodibo, explains that the police chief is expected to appear next week Thursday, October 22nd, 2020. Uzodibo urged victims of the defunct Special Anti-Robbery Squad (SARS) to furnish the committee with information that will enable it to carry out these all-important tasks. The committee plans to conduct public hearings in the 6 geopolitical zones of the country to hear the accounts of families of deceased victims and those that are unlawfully detained by the operatives of the defunct police units. In a similar related development, no fewer than 37 former members of the disbanded Special Anti-Robbery Squad have been penciled down for dismissal from service. The Police Service Commission is also expected to order the prosecution of 24 other ex-SARS operatives for various acts of professional misconduct. These were the highlights of the report of the Presidential Panel on Reform of the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, set up by the federal government in 2018 to reform the dreaded unit. The Presidential Panel had, among other things, investigated allegations of human rights violations and abuse of office against SARS and recommended reform or restructuring of the outfit. Presenting the report to the PSC chairman, Mr. Lee Smith, in Abuja on Friday, the Executive Secretary of the National Human Rights Commission, Tony Ojukwu, called for the speedy implementation of the panel recommendations. A statement by the PSC spokesman, Ikechukwu Ani, said Ojukwu observed that the PSC chairman has what it takes to deal appropriately with the report of the panel. Atiku said the reform was the most topical issue in the country, adding that a lot was expected from the PSC. He noted that the panel called for and received 113 complaints on alleged human rights violations from across the country and 22 memoranda on suggestions on how to reform and restructure SARS and the Nigeria Police Force in general. Also, the Minister of Youth and Sports, Sunday Dari, has identified with the protesting Nigerian youth, saying their demands were justifiable. Dari said the youths have comported themselves by engaging in a peaceful protest in the last 5 days. He said it was part of their democratic right to protest.
Because they have been able to mobilize and also articulate their positions and their demands. They have been able to organize to demand for changes to police, youth, and civilian relations. So I salute their courage. I salute the fact that I identify with their protest, identify with their aspirations and their demands. And I think that so long as this protest is done in a peaceful manner, I think I'm in full support of it.
The Ministry of Youth said President Muhammadu Buhari has responded promptly to their demands.
We are seeing in quick step, like I said, the response of government. He has activated relevant and tangential levels of government to respond to the demands of the protesters. Amongst all the issues concerning the country. And my appeal is that it's important that this effort is a joint one on the part of the Nigerian youth and on the part of government. So long as their demands are clearly articulated, government will work with them to meet this demand. It also takes time to meet the demands.
Coming up in a moment on our entertainment news, Musical Copyright Society of Nigeria visits Edo State Police Commissioner. Details in a moment. The coordinator of Musical Copyright Society of Nigeria, MCSN, in charge of Edo and Delta states, Prince Biodun Egwakide, has solicited for more collaboration with the Nigerian police in the fight against intellectual property theft. Prince Egwakide made the call for collaboration when he led the management team of the society on a courtesy visit to the Edo State Commissioner of Police, Johnson Kokuno, in his office at the command headquarters in Benin City. Egwakide commended the commissioner, officers and men of the command for their contributions to the development of intellectual property and the enforcement of compliance with the extant law and various successes recorded in the fight against copyright violation and intellectual property theft in the zone. He further assured that the organization will continue to uphold global best practices in the enforcement of compliance and equip the police with necessary intelligence to record more achievements in the fight against piracy and intellectual property theft. In his response, the State Commissioner of Police, CP Johnson Kokuno, who commended the organization for the effort, assured of the command's continued support in the fight against piracy. According to CP Kokuno, intellectual property theft is a crime that must be checked to avoid people reaping other people's sweat. While likening the act to corruption, he said it is the duty of the police to sanitize the system. He, however, assured of more synergy between the police and the organization. The group had earlier visited AIGs in 5 headquarters in Benin City to solicit for the same support. And that's it on entertainment. In sports, Choma Ajunwa and Mary Onyari top list of 60 sports icons in celebration of Nigeria's 60th independence anniversary. Elisa Haibeka has more in our sports bulletin this morning.
Olympics medalist Bonjin Maegu, first gold medalist Choma Ajunwa, Million Yali, Sunday Bada, and Commonwealth Games medalist Olawumi Majekodemi and Samuel Igwe were among the 60 Nigerian sports icons unveiled by the Ministry of Youth and Sports Development on Friday in celebration of the country's 60th independence anniversary. The event took place at the velodrome of the Moshood Abiola National Stadium in Abuja.
The awards, according to Sports Minister Solidari, are meant to reward heroes and heroines who have worked hard to put the country's name on the world map. Millionaire businessman Aliko Dangote and Sir Kensington Adebutu, popularly known as Baba Ijebu, were also among the icons selected. But WBA, IBF, and WBO World Boxing Champion Anthony Joshua, as well as former Super Eagles captain Mikel Obi, one of the country's most decorated footballers of all time, were missing on the list of awardees. The list of the sports icon was dominated by members of the Super Eagles of 1980 and 1994, the Atlanta 1996 gold-winning football side, as well as track and field athletes and boxers. Former Super Eagles stars Nwako Kanu, Austin Okocha, Daniel Amokachi, Gabalawa, and Emmanuel Amoke of the famed 1994 and Atlanta 1996 teams were selected for the awards. Nigerian defender William Troost Ekong heads to Watford to record a 1-0 win over Derby County in the English Championship last night. The Super Eagles vice captain only recently joined the Hornets from Sierra Ask Club Udinese during the transfer window, and he was included in the starting 11 for his debut, which saw the visitors pick their first away win since January this year. However, he was replaced with 19 minutes left in the game. The only goal of the game was scored by Joao Pedro in the 76th minute, and the victory took Watford to 5th position on 10 points in the 2014 championship table. And finally, West Ham United have signed Algerian winger Said Benrahma from Brentford in a deal that could rise to £30 million. The 25-year-old joins on loan for £5 million, but the Hammers have an obligation to make the transfer permanent for £20 million, with a further £5 million possible in add-ons. He completed the first part of his medical on Thursday, but an issue had arisen, which was resolved in time for the deal to go ahead on Friday. Benrahma, who will wear the number 9 shirt at London Stadium, scored 17 goals in 43 championship appearances last season as Brentford reached the playoff final. And that's sports news on KUFM Sports Blog. My name is Ewusa. I will end back to Charles.
Thank you very much, Agosa, for those sports stories. And of course, with those sports stories, we come to the end of our package this morning. But before we leave, here's a quick recap of the headlines. Governor Obaseki has condemned the attack on NSAS protesters in the Benin City. The Police Service Commission is to dismiss 37 ex-SARS officers, and the Senate to summon the IGP over cases of police brutality. Do remember that the continued unity of Nigeria is a collective responsibility. Be sure to play your part. Do not forget, you can listen to us anywhere in the world by visiting our website at www.kufm.net or downloading our mobile app from the Google Play Store. We are also live on YouTube at KUFM Nigeria, and you can also listen to us on radiogarden.com. KUFM